A single shipping container sits on a dock in Rotterdam. Inside, you might find electronics assembled in Shenzhen, semiconductors fabricated in Hsinchu, and packaging derived from forestry assets in Thailand. You see the consumer brand on the box, perhaps Apple or Nike, but the infrastructure that moved it there, the energy that fueled the ship, and the trade credit that financed the transaction belong to someone else. We often view global trade as a faceless system of algorithms and international treaties. It is not. It is a network of specific families who control the choke points of the global economy. From the deep water ports of Panama to the silicon foundries of Taiwan, a select group of Asian dynasties essentially owns the operating system of modern capitalism. They do not just move goods, they control the flow of energy, food, and technology. These families operate with a timeline that outlasts democratic election cycles, allowing them to build monopolies that are largely invisible to the average consumer. To understand how they achieve this dominance, we must look past the modern tech giants and go back to the oldest strategy in the book, the trading house. The blueprint for this kind of total supply chain dominance was not written in a modern business school. It was forged in 17th century Japan. The House of Mitsui began as a simple kimono shop in 1673, but the family understood something fundamental. Controlling the product is less powerful than controlling the logistics and financing around it. They evolved over centuries into a sogo shosha, a general trading company. Today, Mitsui is not just a company, it is a global intermediary that handles everything from iron ore extraction in Australia to grain distribution in the Americas. They operate on a cradle-to-grave philosophy. They do not just sell the energy, they own the exploration rights, the tankers that transport the liquefied natural gas, and the trading desks that hedge the price risk. By capturing value at every step of the chain, they render themselves indispensable. This model of total integration found a parallel in India with the Tata family. While Mitsui focused on trade, the Tatas focused on nation building. Jamsetji Tata did not just build a steel mill, he built the city of Jamshedpur around it to ensure a stable workforce. This alignment with national interest is a critical strategic layer. When a family conglomerate aligns its growth with the industrialization of a country, it gains a level of political insulation that public companies rarely achieve. The Tata Group operates as a sovereign corporate state. They provide the power grid, the salt on the dinner table, the trucks on the highway, and the IT backbone running the banks. The true power of this structure lies in its financial resilience. These families utilize a strategy of cross-subsidization that allows them to dominate markets simply by outlasting their competitors. In a cyclical downturn, a standalone steel company might face bankruptcy. A family conglomerate like Tata can absorb losses in heavy industry for a decade, propping it up with massive cash flows from their technology services division. They can afford to lose money on the physical supply chain because they are making billions on the digital one. This allows them to maintain capacity when everyone else is cutting back, so when the market turns, they are the only ones left standing. These entities are often more stable than the governments they operate under. Prime ministers and presidents come and go, but the trading houses remain the constant variable in the economic equation. They are the invisible giants upon which the visible economy rests. But while these foundational families built the industrial base, a different group of dynasties realized that if you cannot own the goods, you should own the gateways they pass through. If the trading houses are the architects of the supply chain, the port operators are its gatekeepers. In this arena, one name stands above the rest: Li Ka-shing. Known in Hong Kong as Superman, Li built his empire on a strategy that requires nerves of steel, purchasing critical infrastructure when blood is in the streets. His conglomerate, CK Hutchison, does not chase quarterly growth trends or the hype cycle of the moment. Instead, they wait for global crises to depress asset prices, and then they buy the unmovable foundations of trade. This patience has allowed the Li family to amass a portfolio that includes key terminals at the Panama Canal, the port of Felixstowe in the United Kingdom, and major hubs in Rotterdam. This is not simply real estate investment, it is the privatization of the global border. When a container moves from a factory in Guangdong to a warehouse in London, it is almost certainly passing through a node controlled by this single dynasty. In effect, the Li family collects a toll on the movement of the global economy. They have positioned themselves so that regardless of who manufactures the product or who consumes it, the transaction cannot happen without their infrastructure. Their network of 52 ports in 26 countries creates a layer of dependency that most nations do not fully comprehend until a disruption occurs. While Li Ka-shing locked down the established trade routes of the developed world, another figure carved out a dominance in the world's most dangerous waters. Enrique Razon and his Manila-based empire, International Container Terminal Services Incorporated, ICTSI, operates on a different philosophy. Razon targets frontier markets, the places where Western logic sees only liability. When major logistics firms looked at the port of Qasr in Iraq, they saw a war zone. Razon saw the only entry point for a rebuilding nation. From the Democratic Republic of Congo to the drug trade-impacted ports of Latin America, the Razon family secures long-term concessions in volatile regions. The strategic genius here is the creation of a sovereign monopoly. By operating the only viable modern port in a developing nation, the Razon family becomes a partner to the state itself. If you control the port in a country that relies on imports for food and energy, you hold a position of influence that no foreign ambassador can match. This is high-risk, high-reward geopolitics disguised as logistics. This concentration of power highlights a critical advantage of the Asian family model, the ability to act as a silent partner. In the current geopolitical climate, port acquisitions by state-owned enterprises often trigger national security alarms in Western capitals. Governments are wary of foreign flags flying over their strategic docks. However, a private family conglomerate is often viewed through a commercial lens. They can operate in jurisdictions where state-backed entities would be blocked. They provide the operational efficiency and capital investment that nations need without the political baggage of a foreign government. This allows families like the Lis and the Razons to control the physical Internet of Things, the complex lattice of cranes, docks and terminals, while remaining largely invisible to the public eye. They are the neutral brokers in an increasingly polarized world, ensuring that commerce flows regardless of diplomatic tensions. Yet controlling the solid ground is only half the equation. To fully capture the value of the supply chain, one must also master the fluid environment between these nodes. It is powerful to own the port, but it is equally critical to command the massive vessels that connect them. Moving physical goods is the traditional game, but controlling the vessels that travel between these ports requires a different kind of mastery. If you want to understand the scale of this dominance, look back to March 2021. When the Ever Given wedged itself across the Suez Canal, it froze nearly $10 billion of trade every single day. The world saw a traffic jam. Logistics experts saw the sheer indispensability of the Evergreen Group. Founded by Dr. Chang Yong-fa, Evergreen is not merely a shipping line, it is a testament to the power of a family-run philosophy applied to the high seas. While the memes circulated, the incident revealed a stark reality. A single Asian conglomerate operating with family-driven directives held the capacity to bring the global just-in-time economy to a grinding halt. The Chang family manages their empire with a level of discipline that public companies struggle to replicate. In the volatile world of maritime shipping, freight rates can crash overnight. A publicly traded CEO, beholden to quarterly earnings reports, will panic during these downturns. They sell off assets to stop the bleeding and appease shareholders. Asian shipping dynasties do the opposite. They utilize a counter-cyclical investment strategy. When the market crashes and shipping rates hit rock bottom, these families open their war chests. They buy vessels from distressed competitors for pennies on the dollar. They order new, larger ships when shipyards are desperate for work and offering discounts. This requires a timeline measured in decades, not quarters. They absorb the losses for 2 or 3 years, knowing that when the global economy inevitably rebounds, they will be the only ones with the capacity to handle the surge. We saw this play out during the post-pandemic boom. While Western firms scrambled to lease containers at premium prices, families like the Changs and the Tung family of Hong Kong were ready with fleets they had expanded during the lean years. They effectively taxed the recovery because they were the only ones willing to invest during the crisis. But their control does not stop at the water's edge. The modern strategy is total vertical integration. It is no longer enough to own the ship, you must own the trucks that meet the ship and the cold chain warehouses that store the goods. These families are quietly buying up land-based logistics networks across Southeast Asia and Europe, ensuring that they control the data and the cargo from the factory floor to the retail shelf. They navigate this complex web using flags of convenience, registering ships in Panama or Liberia, not just for tax efficiency, but for operational agility. This allows them to bypass restrictive labor regulations and national mandates that would slow down a state-run fleet. They have created a borderless maritime state that exists above the laws of any single nation. However, while moving physical atoms is the foundation of the global economy, the modern world has developed a new, more critical bottleneck. There is a component so vital that without it, the ships cannot sail, the ports cannot operate, and the global banking system would cease to function. Control over this sector offers more than just profit, it offers a silicon shield against geopolitical aggression. This brings us to the most precarious choke point in human history. While the Changs and the Lis control the movement of atoms across the ocean, another force controls the movement of electrons. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, represents a different kind of dynasty. While it is technically a public giant with a dispersed shareholder base, its strategic DNA is entirely the product of one man's vision, Morris Chang. His philosophy operates with the absolute authority and long-term horizon of a family patriarch, creating a corporate culture that functions less like a modern tech firm and more like a monastic order dedicated to perfection. Morris Chang did not just build a company, he invented a business model that would become the single most important geopolitical asset of the 21st century. To understand why this specific node is so powerful, you have to understand the pure play foundry model. Before Chang founded TSMC in 1987, chip companies were integrated device manufacturers. They designed their own chips and they built them in their own factories. It was an ego-driven industry where real men owned fabs. Chang's insight was humble but revolutionary. He decided TSMC would never design a chip. They would never compete with their customers. They would simply be the factory for everyone else. This decision created a vacuum of absolute trust that sucked in the entire global technology sector. Today, companies like Apple, Nvidia, and Qualcomm do not own the machines that manufacture their brains. They rely entirely on TSMC. This dependency is not accidental. It was engineered through decades of capital-intensive loyalty. This dominance created what analysts call the Silicon Shield. For Taiwan, a small island democracy living in the shadow of a superpower, TSMC is not merely a revenue generator, it is a survival strategy. By concentrating the world's most advanced manufacturing capacity in a single location, specifically the science parks of Hsinchu, Chang ensured that the global economy is structurally unable to tolerate a conflict in the Taiwan Strait. If those foundries go offline, it is not just a bad quarter for Silicon Valley, it is a global depression. The American military relies on these chips for its guidance systems. The Chinese telecommunications grid relies on these chips for its infrastructure. This mutual assured economic destruction provides a layer of security that no diplomatic treaty could ever guarantee. Western governments are now frantically trying to replicate this node, pouring billions into friendshoring initiatives in Arizona and Germany. However, they are discovering that you can export the lithography machines, but you cannot easily export the culture. The TSMC model relies on a specific social contract, a workforce of PhD-level engineers willing to work grueling shifts to solve microscopic yield problems at 3 in the morning. It is a culture of extreme precision, hierarchy, and sacrifice that mirrors the family-run ethos of the shipping magnates applied to the nanometer scale. This is the secret sauce that Western capital struggles to buy. The only entity that comes close to this scale is the Li family of Samsung in South Korea. But their approach highlights exactly why TSMC's neutral partner strategy is so formidable. The Li dynasty built a vertical empire. They make the screen, the battery, the memory, and the phone itself. Because Samsung competes with its own customers, Apple can never fully trust them with their proprietary designs. The Li family's ambition to own the entire value chain created a ceiling for their foundry business. Maurice Chang's refusal to compete created an unlimited ceiling for TSMC. The result is a terrifying paradox for global strategists. The most futuristic technology on Earth, the AI models and data centers defining the next century, relies on a manufacturing monopoly that operates with the secrecy and consolidated power of an old-world fiefdom. We have effectively centralized the brain of the global economy. A single earthquake, a single blockade, or a single strategic decision by this board could sever the neural pathways of modern civilization. The world's superpowers are now forced to align their foreign policy with the business interests of this single corporate entity. We have handed the keys to the digital future to one island, and specifically to the strategic legacy of one man. High-tech chips power the world, but the most fundamental supply chain is the one that keeps humanity alive. While we fret over the supply of microchips, there is a more primal anxiety that governments fear above all else: hunger. You can delay buying a new iPhone, but you cannot delay dinner. In this high-stakes arena of caloric security, one family casts a shadow longer than any other: the Chiravanant family of Thailand, owners of the Charoen Pokphand Group, CP. Their empire began humbly in 1921 with a small seed shop in Bangkok's Chinatown named Chia Thai. Today, they are the world's largest producer of animal feed and shrimp, but to call them a farming company is a massive understatement. Chiravanant. The Chiravanants mastered the strategy of total vertical integration long before Silicon Valley adopted the term. They do not just grow the chicken, they manufacture the scientifically formulated feed that fattens the chicken. They own the farms where the chicken is raised. They own the processing plants that package the meat. And crucially, they own the retail outlets where the final product is sold, controlling over 12,000 7-Eleven convenience stores across Thailand alone. This seed-to-shelf dominance means the family captures value at every single transaction point. If the price of feed goes up, their feed division profits. If the retail price drops, their volume at 7-Eleven compensates. It is a closed-loop ecosystem that insulates them from the volatility that bankrupts independent farmers. When you buy a simple microwavable meal in Bangkok, you are effectively paying a micro-tax to one family for the rice, the meat, the packaging, and the logistics that delivered it. But their influence extends far beyond the supermarket aisle. The Chiravanants are the architects of what experts call food diplomacy. When China opened its economy to the world in the late 1970s, Western companies were hesitant, fearing the communist regime would seize their assets. The Chiravanant patriarch, Danin Chiravanant, did not hesitate. He leveraged his Teochew cultural roots to become the very first foreign investor in the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, holding Foreign Investment Certificate number 0001. While the West sent diplomats, the Chiravanants sent chicken farms. They modernized China's protein supply chain, feeding a population that was just beginning to demand meat in their diet. This bold move secured them a position of trust in Beijing that few foreigners possess. They operate as a geopolitical bridge, smoothing relations between nations through the universal language of food security. In moments of tension, trade in electronics might halt, but the trade in soybeans and livestock must continue. This makes the CP Group a stabilizing force in Asian geopolitics, a business empire that effectively functions as a Ministry of Agriculture for the region. Furthermore, they have transformed agriculture from a peasant activity into high-precision logistics. Their farms are biosecure data centers where genetics and nutrition are optimized by algorithms. In a world facing climate change and population growth, the ability to scale protein production efficiently is not just good business. It is a prerequisite for social order. The Chiravanants understand that while technology powers the future, food secures the present. They have built an empire that is recession-proof, because no matter what the stock market does, 8 billion people need to eat every single day. These individual empires are impressive, but their true power lies in how they connect with one another. We are witnessing the modern evolution of the bamboo network, a complex web of diaspora connections that allows capital and information to flow across borders, bypassing formal diplomatic channels. When a port needs to be built in Indonesia or a factory financed in Vietnam, the deal is often struck through family associations and shared heritage rather than through cold legal tenders. Trust here is not based on a contract, it is based on lineage and a shared history of survival. This informal diplomacy is critical. When official government relations freeze between nations, these business families often keep the back channels open, ensuring that the gears of commerce continue to turn despite political posturing. This is not just about nostalgia, it is a pragmatic mechanism for risk reduction. In a region where legal systems can be opaque, reputation within the network serves as the ultimate collateral. This network thrives on a strategy of strict state alignment. These families do not fight the government, they align their balance sheets with national destiny. Whether it is the Belt and Road Initiative or India's infrastructure push, these conglomerates position themselves as the inevitable partners for state ambition. They become the implementation arm of national policy, effectively making themselves too big to fail politically. They build the bridges, the power plants, and the digital backbones that politicians promise to voters but cannot deliver on their own. Unlike Western multinationals that often view regulation as an obstacle, these families view the state as their primary client. Yet they maintain this influence by adhering to the silence is golden rule. You will rarely see these patriarchs giving TED Talks or fighting on social media. They understand a truth that modern Western CEOs have forgotten: fame is a liability. In the world of logistics and infrastructure, invisibility is an asset. By staying off the front page, they avoid the populist backlash that targets visible tech billionaires, allowing them to monopolize critical nodes without public scrutiny. However, they face a looming crisis: the third-generation curse. We are currently witnessing the largest transfer of industrial wealth in history. The patriarchs who built these empires from the ashes of war are passing control to grandchildren educated at Harvard and Wharton. The risk is profound. Can a generation raised in luxury maintain the founder's mentality required to navigate treacherous geopolitical waters? Or will they pivot to financial engineering and strip the assets their grandfathers built? To prove their worth, this new guard is aggressively pivoting toward green supply chains. They are investing billions in methanol-fueled ships and circular economies to stay ahead of Western regulations. This is not environmental altruism, it is a defensive moat. They are future-proofing their monopolies against carbon taxes, ensuring they remain the gatekeepers of trade for the next 50 years. They prioritize relationships over transactions and decades over quarters, understanding that the only timeline that matters is the one that secures the legacy. Ultimately, the global supply chain is not a machine run by faceless algorithms. It is a human system, steered by specific families who understand that real power is invisible. They teach us the core rules of empire: control the choke points, keep your mouth shut, and plan for your grandchildren, not your shareholders. The next shift in global power is already happening in these private boardrooms. To understand the forces shaping your future before they hit the headlines, subscribe to continue exploring the Asian impact on the world.